There's this quiet illusion a lot of us carry that if we just focus on doing great work, if we stay humble, kind, and competent, we'll get what we deserve: promotions, respect, a seat at the table. But if you've been out in the real world for more than 5 minutes, you've probably felt it too. That silent shift in the room when influence walks in, the unspoken rules, the back channels, the way power plays out even when no one mentions the word. We don't like talking about it, especially those of us who value ideas over politics, books over boardrooms. We want to believe merit is enough, and so we tell ourselves, I'm not here for the game, I'm here to do good work. But here's the truth: the game is already happening, and choosing not to play doesn't mean you're not being played. Most leadership books start at chapter 10. They talk about vision, team culture, servant leadership, all assuming you already hold the mic. But what if you don't? What if you're not the one making decisions, but the one being decided on? What if you sense your influence slipping and you don't know how to stop it? That's what this book is really about. The book we're exploring today is called 7 Rules of Power. Surprising but true. Advice on how to get things done and advance your career. It was published in 2022 by Jeffrey Pfeffer, a professor at Stanford's Graduate School of Business, whose course on power has been one of the university's most in-demand electives for decades. This book distills decades of research in organizational behavior and social psychology into 7 unapologetically honest rules for gaining and keeping power. Let's break it down, starting with something uncomfortable, but foundational. So here's the first truth: the world runs on power. We like to imagine the world as a fair place. We want to believe that talent rises naturally, that effort pays off, and that leadership is earned by character. But the truth? Success, especially at the top, is never just about performance. It's about positioning, it's about visibility, and yes, it's about power. Every organization is a hierarchy, whether it admits it or not. There are limited spots at the top and far more people competing to get there. That makes power a scarce resource, and every promotion, every opportunity, a zero-sum game. As you rise, skills begin to equalize. Everyone is competent, everyone is smart. What separates the influential from the overlooked isn't their resume, it's how they move through the room, how they form alliances, read the politics, use soft power when it counts. Some say that with the internet, with decentralization, with remote work, power dynamics have faded. Pfeffer disagrees, and he's got the data to back it up. His argument is simple: the tools may have changed, but the fundamentals haven't. In fact, digital platforms have only amplified existing hierarchies. Social media hasn't democratized influence. It's made it easier to concentrate. Now let's talk about a second truth. Power isn't good or bad. It's just a tool. One of Pfeffer's most provocative claims is that power is morally neutral. It's like fire. It can warm a home or burn it down. Yet many people, especially those with strong values, instinctively recoil from power. They associate it with corruption, ego, manipulation. But here's the paradox: the people who are most reluctant to seek power are often the ones who would use it most responsibly. And when they stay out of the game, they leave it to those who don't share their ethics. You don't have to become ruthless, you just have to stop being naive. Pfeffer tells the story of countless professionals who lost their influence, not because they weren't capable, but because they refused to see power as part of the equation. Let's go one layer deeper. Power doesn't just shape your status, it amplifies your strengths. There's a common belief that if you do excellent work, people will notice. And sometimes they do. But more often, visibility is not a byproduct of talent. It's a result of power. Pfeffer argues that power multiplies your ability to get things done. It gives your voice weight. It gets your ideas heard. It doesn't replace talent, but it makes talent matter. Without power, even the best ideas can die in silence. With it, your influence grows, and so does your impact. Now let me bring this down to earth with a real-world example, one that changed everything for a man named Rajiv Pant. He was a rising star in the tech world. He had the credentials, the experience, the drive. At one point, he was in the running for a CTO role at a major publishing company, but he didn't get the job. His colleague did, and became his boss. Rajiv took the loss gracefully. He shook hands, negotiated a peaceful departure, and maintained his professionalism. But as he sat in that office, preparing to leave, he noticed something on his new boss's bookshelf, a copy of Pfeffer's earlier book, Power. That moment stuck with him. He realized he hadn't just lost a title, he'd lost a game he didn't know he was playing. So he studied. He bought every version of the book, audio, digital, print. He didn't just read it, he applied it, and what happened? He didn't just bounce back, he surged ahead. Rajiv went on to become the CTO of the New York Times and later the Wall Street Journal. He never got blindsided like that again. So why does any of this matter? Power isn't just about dominance. It's about agency. It's about knowing how influence works so you're not at its mercy. Because if we want good people to lead, to build, to change systems that don't serve everyone, then good people have to understand power. You don't have to become a shark, but you do have to stop swimming blind. Before we dive into the first rule, let's pause and make something clear. Not everyone needs to chase power. If you're someone who's happiest contributing behind the scenes, if you'd rather stay authentic than strategic, if being liked matters more to you than being in charge, then maybe this path isn't for you. Because pursuing power isn't always comfortable. It asks you to do things that feel unnatural. It pushes you out of your emotional comfort zone. And rule number 1 of power is exactly that. You have to shift your mindset. You need to want power more than you want comfort. Let's look at the first mental barrier: modesty. We're taught to be humble, to let our work speak for itself, to wait patiently and hope someone notices. But in the power game, that's a losing strategy. Talented people often suffer from what psychologists call imposter syndrome, the belief that they're not truly qualified even when they are. You've probably felt it too. The voice that whispers, "I don't really belong here." The problem is, when you hesitate to project confidence, others sense it, and they begin to doubt you too. Self-promotion isn't arrogance, it's survival. People can't support what they don't see. And your team, your peers, they want to see someone who believes in themselves. So what do? You practice? Yes, even faking confidence can help. It's called embodied cognition. When you act the part, your brain begins to catch up. You start stepping into that identity and others follow your lead. In his classroom, Pfeffer often hears this: "I'm not good at speaking up. English isn't my first language. Can I just submit the written work and skip the class discussion?" But power isn't built in silence. If you can't claim space in a low-stakes classroom, how will you handle a high-stakes boardroom? The safest place to practice power is in spaces where the cost of failure is low. And that means speaking up, taking the mic, practicing confidence, even when it feels unnatural. One of Pfeffer's students, a brilliant engineer named Sarah, once refused to present her own team's success at a leadership offsite. She felt her manager should get the credit. The problem? No one saw her contribution. Months later, she was passed over for a promotion. Her new manager said, "We just didn't realize you were such a key player." Now, let's tackle the second barrier: prioritizing the group over yourself. We've all heard it. Be a team player. Work hard, stay humble, and the rewards will come. That's lovely in theory, but in practice, those born into higher social classes don't believe that for a second. They don't expect rewards for being quiet. They expect them because they claim them. A famous study of students at Eton, the UK's elite prep school, found their biggest asset wasn't intelligence. It was shamelessness. They were unapologetic in asking for what they wanted. Now, consider 2 strategies to gain power. A. Work hard, support your team, contribute quietly. B. Build relationships upward, self-promote, play the politics. Which would you choose? Turns out lower class individuals tend to prefer A. Higher class individuals lean into B because collective loyalty is often a survival strategy of the under-resourced. But in the power game, B gets results. This plays out in gender and race too. In Silicon Valley, white men are dramatically more likely to reach executive roles than women or Asian professionals. It's not always discrimination, it's often social conditioning. Women and Asian Americans are taught to be collaborative, humble, agreeable, but those traits, while noble, don't always translate to power. If you want to lead, you have to be willing to direct others, not dominate, but direct. That means speaking up, making decisions, and not apologizing for authority. Pfeffer once described a case where an Asian American marketing VP, known for being a brilliant team player, consistently deferred credit to her team. Her CEO admitted later, "She's amazing, but I just don't see her as a leader." That perception didn't change until she began openly taking charge in meetings, making calls, and framing the team's success around her leadership. So, what if you still feel guilty? Try this. Tell yourself that gaining power helps you help others. Frame your ambition as service. It's not selfish, it's strategic generosity. Now let's talk about the third barrier: honesty over strategy. We're told to be real, to just be ourselves. But what does that even mean? Which self? Your 6-year-old self? Your anxious self? Your ideal self? Radical honesty feels noble, but in power dynamics, it can be self-sabotage. There was a writer who tried to go for a week saying only the full truth. He confessed crushes, criticized his in-laws, blurted out every unfiltered thought. The result? Chaos, alienation, a trail of damaged relationships. In the power game, it's not about lying, it's about being intentional. Not every thought needs to be shared. Not every truth needs to be told. You don't say, "I'm nervous," before a big speech. You don't open with, "I don't know if I'm good enough." Because people look to you for confidence. If you don't show it, they won't feel it. When power is the goal, strategic communication isn't deception, it's leadership. There's a story about a young nonprofit director who, in her first all-staff meeting, confessed she was terrified to lead. Her intention was to be authentic. Instead, she lost the room. Staff began second-guessing her every move. Within 3 months, the board asked her to step down. And finally, the fourth barrier: being liked over being respected. Most people want to be liked. We all do. But here's the twist. The more agreeable you are, the less competent people think you are. In study after study, nice guys are seen as less capable. Even in online reviews, those who leave critical comments are perceived as smarter than those who offer praise. You don't want to be everyone's favorite. You want to be seen as someone who can get things done. People who rise often walk a fine line. They're not necessarily warm, but they're effective. Especially at the top, being universally liked is a red flag. It signals conformity, not leadership. So how do you overcome that? You demonstrate value first, authority first, and once that's established, you can add warmth. Think of it this way: thunder, then sunshine. Strength first, kindness second. Because if you reverse it, you're not a leader. You're just nice. So let's recap. If you want power, you'll have to unlearn a few things. Stop being modest when confidence is required. Stop prioritizing collective harmony over personal visibility. Stop confusing honesty with impact. And stop mistaking likability for leadership. These aren't personality flaws. They're learned habits. And they can be unlearned. Next time, we'll continue with 7 rules of power. Should you always follow the rules or learn when to bend them?